Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to ARC's bi-weekly fireside chat. We have some incredible human beings, as we always do, for our show this week. So I want to welcome you all. And the advocacy policy change is such an important pillar in ARC's work. Uh, and as of 2020, the 2021 legislative session comes to an end, we wanted to update our community on the various legislation we worked on this year. And to walk us through this are these incredible policy gurus here. So we have uh, none other than Esteban Nunez, ARC Director of Advocacy, Selena Chapman, Public Policy Associate, and Miguel Garcia, Advocacy Coordinator. I could tell you all some incredible things, but instead of these individuals who I love to work with and enjoy working with, but instead, why not go directly to them? So Esteban, could you introduce yourself? How are you doing today? And can you tell us what are some of your responsibilities here at ARC?
No, thank you, Sam. Hey, everyone, I'm doing well. I essentially quarterback the state policy for the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, while also engaging our membership and prioritizing, policies that are near and dear to our members, but also policies that would help bring some of our loved ones that are still inside home. So I get to work, and I have the opportunity to work with such a fantastic team, two of which our team members are here today. So, it's been an honor and pleasure to be with ARC. I've been with ARC for 4 years now, almost 5, pretty much the entire time I've been home, and have really just loved the sense of community and loved just the tenacity behind the advocacy realm that ARC plays in. So happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you, brother. Selena, please introduce yourself. Thank you for joining us. Introduce yourself. How are you doing today? And tell us a little bit about your responsibilities here at ARC.
Hi, thanks, Sam. I'm Selena Chapin. I am on the public policy and advocacy team here at ARC. I work both in state public policy and federal public policy, so a little bit of both. I've been at ARC for about 5 years. I love it. I'm doing great today. I'm happy to be here with all of you.
Thank you, Selena. Miguel.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today? Could you introduce yourself? Tell us how you're doing today, and tell us a little bit about your responsibilities here at ARC.
I'm doing great. I had a great workout this morning, but my responsibilities with ARC are focusing on a lot of the youth justice state policy, as well as implementation at the local level. Along with that, I oversee some of the agencies that have authority over Title 15 and 24 regulations, such as the Board and State Community Corrections, and other agencies that are overseeing some of the criminal justice policy and juvenile justice policy that is being implemented in California.
A lot of policy that's being, we're fixing a system that has been broken for so long. That's the best way that I can describe it. Selena, let's start with what's made it to the governor's desk this year, and which of our bills are up to be signed this year?
Yeah, so we have a couple of bills that are on the governor's desk right now. One of them is AB 333, which creates due process protections with respect to gang enhancements. A gang enhancement can be anything from a couple of years to 10 years, or can even be the difference between a life sentence and a determinate sentence. And they can be a problem for many reasons. One of the main ones is that they exacerbate racial prejudice in our criminal justice system by really targeting people of color and people in low-income communities and criminalizing their relationships within those communities. Research has shown us that 92% of people who receive gang enhancements are people of color. So when we see these huge racial disparities around a sentencing practice, and when the stakes are so high, like so many years of someone's freedom can be taken away by that practice, that's a signal. I mean, it's more than a signal. It's a mandate for us to examine and apply some pretty hefty due process boundaries around that sentencing practice. This bill is super important to ARC and our members who have been harmed by lack of due process protections around the application of gang enhancements. Many of them have had several years added to their base sentence at a really young age because of racial profiling or the neighborhoods that they live in, things that are really outside of their control. and that caused a deeper mistrust of the system. So this bill does three things to kind of mitigate those issues. One of them is that it reduces the list of crimes that allow prosecutors to prove the existence of a criminal street gang. Another thing that it does is it separates gang allegations from the underlying charges at trial at the request of the defense counsel. This is really important because something that we have seen is that if a jury hears about gang enhancements, they are much more likely to find that person guilty of the underlying offense. And then the third thing that it does is it seeks to reduce wrongful convictions by providing clearer definitions for what the prosecution must prove to ensure that gang enhancements are only kind of used in the most serious and violent cases. This bill is just a step in the right direction. Of course, we think that gang enhancements are problematic as a whole. Their existence is problematic, but this bill takes a really, really important step in the right direction. So that is a bill that's super important. It's on the governor's desk right now. The other bill that made it through the legislative process that's on the governor's desk right now is AB 89. And it increases minimum standards to be a peace officer in California from 18 years of age with a high school diploma or GED to 21 years of age. And by January 1st, 2025, peace officers must also have a newly developed associate's degree in modern policing or a bachelor's degree in the discipline of their choosing. There are a few reasons why we're interested in this. We really want to decrease instances of violence, and we want to give law enforcement the tools and life experience and maturity to de-escalate situations, and to have like a healthier relationship between law enforcement and our communities. So that is another bill that is on the governor's desk right now. The governor has until October 10th to sign or veto these bills. He can also just ignore them, in which case they pass. So I encourage anyone listening to reach out to the governor, tweet about these bills, definitely show that they are important to you and they're important to your community.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. Greatly appreciate all that information that you just shared with us. Esteban, those weren't the only bills we worked on this year. So what can we expect to see revisited next year in terms of bill? Could you explain what a 2-year bill is?
Yeah, so essentially the way the legislative sessions or seasons work, or they happen in increments of 2 years. So every session starts and continues with the following year. So this was the first year of a 2-year session. So a lot of our bills got held to allow, oftentimes you'll hear the term not fully cooked. So a lot of legislators felt like the bills still needed to undergo a lot more I'd say negotiations between various stakeholders. And so we have a number of bills that are spilling over until next year, to next year. SB 481 being one, which SB 481 reinstated a judge's authority to be able to strike or dismiss a special circumstance, which ultimately results in a life without the possibility of parole sentence. 481 would have allowed a person to be able to petition to go back in front of a judge after serving 15 years in prison. And then ultimately the judge would have the discretion, of course, to strike or dismiss that special circumstance, which would then result in that person having an opportunity at some point in time to be able to go in front of a parole board. The bill, SB 481, was specific to people who were under 26 at the time of the crime, which is consistent with policy that ARC has sponsored and prioritized in the past, SB 260, 261, and 1308. So 481 is currently on the Senate floor. And the way that 2-year bills work is a bill has to leave the House of Origin by the end of January the following year. Otherwise, that bill is dead. So in the case of 481, because it's a Senate bill, it has to leave the Senate by the end of January. Otherwise, it goes inactive, which means it becomes dead. So, but if a bill, I'll give you another example. So we also have SB 262, which is strikes the balance of trying to bring equity into the pretrial justice system, specifically around bail. So SB 262 codifies Humphrey's decision, which was a California Supreme Court decision that said judges have to look at a person's ability to pay. It does go a little further in also stating that a judge has to recognize a person's hardships, and those hardships really being childcare, basic transportation costs, basic costs of living, which judges do in a civil case, when they're looking at a person's ability to pay. So this just makes the same thing applicable on the criminal side. SB 262 also would create a statewide bail schedule, so alleviating kind of the justice by county, where you have different counties having different bail schedules for different crimes, bringing some uniformity to bail schedules in California. And then thirdly, SB 262 created would require bail companies to essentially return 95% of a person's premium if charges are dropped on the person, if charges are ultimately never filed, and or if somebody makes every single one of their court dates. So similar to if you had the financial ability to pay for your bond as opposed to going through a bail bondsman, and you make every court date, or charges are eventually dropped or charges are never filed, that money gets returned to you. So this kind of creates that just on going through a bail bondsman side. And then, lastly, what 262 really tried to do is really just look at a person's ability, right? A person's ability to pay, but also ensuring that when they're released, that there's no financial cost to the person being released. So if a judge deems that a person can be released and it's safe for the public, and that person be on ankle monitor, there is no ankle monitor fees. There's no cost to the person being released. So 262 really is about ensuring that liberty has no association to monetary value. And because that bill is currently on the assembly floor, as I kind of alluded to with SB 481, because that bill is out of the House of Origin, it has ultimately until next September to pass, and that's really the only deadline that it's going to be held to. In addition to those two, we also have ACA 3, which is an Assembly constitutional amendment to eliminate involuntary servitude in California's Constitution. I can talk about this until I'm blue in the face, but ultimately this is about ridding the racist implications that still exist in California. In California's institutions. I mean, it doesn't get more institutional than our Constitution. So in a time where we're really striving towards eliminating institutional racism, this really strikes at the heart of that by eliminating it in the very document that our legislative officials and other leaders look to as guidance in how we run a state. So really, this has to do really it's about choice. It's about allowing people who are in prison the option to work, or the option to take part in rehabilitative programming, or whatever they may so choose. But it's about choice and not forcing people into labor. Outside of that, there's another bill, but I'll let Miguel speak on it because he's leading on it. So Miguel.
Yeah. Go ahead.
There was one other bill, Esteban. Wasn't there 731 also? Or is 731 what you're going to speak to, Miguel?
I was going to speak
No.
on AB 1127, but Esteban, do you want to go ahead and wrap that one up?
Yeah, sorry, my phone's malfunctioning a little bit. Yes, sorry, Sam. You're absolutely correct. So we also had SB 731, which is a 2-year bill, also on the assembly floor. SB 731, essentially, there's 2 pieces to it. The first piece is it would automated expungement process for arrest records. And when I say automated, what it does is it would flag for courts when a person is eligible for the expungement, and then ultimately set a date. Now that person would still have to go in front of the court. The district attorney or whomever still has an opportunity to challenge the court ruling, and ultimately the judge still holds the discretion to do the expungement or not. And this is specific to arrest records. The second piece of the bill is for majority of ARC's membership, people who are convicted of serious or what California defines as serious or violent crimes. It would allow for a person after 2 years after having discharged supervision to be able to petition the court, and then ultimately again go in front of a judge and go through the process where the judge ultimately has discretion. In California, there's no real expungement opportunities for people who were convicted of some of these, some of what California considers serious or violent crimes. So this really would be the first unveiling the first pathway for folks like myself, folks like others out here. I don't want to speak for anybody, but really, this is about allowing people to have something to strive towards. It's about, because the reality is licensing agencies will still have access for the most part to individuals' records. It'll just say that the record has been expunged, but it allows for an opportunity for the individual to advocate on their own behalf and to not be judged by their rap sheet or what their past may allude to. I'll tell you, I am a very different person than what you would see in my criminal background, and I'm not the only one, right? So this really is about affording people an opportunity for a real second chance in California, where they're not going to be judged, based on what may be the worst decision they made in their past, where they'll have equal opportunities at housing, equal opportunities at employment, and it opens the door for career pathways, because the reality is a lot of people with criminal backgrounds are barred. There's blanket policies against licensing for people like myself, and so this really opens the door for to allow for folks like myself to become social workers, should they so choose, right? And so 731 is of course a very important measure, and also is on the assembly floor, so we have until next September to pass it.
Thank you, Esteban. So that's 4 2-year bills, and Miguel has one more. Miguel, could you share with us about Assembly Bill 1127, sponsored by Santiago?
Yes. So AB 1127, sponsored by Assemblymember Santiago and a coalition made up of District Attorney the Los Angeles District Attorney Gascon, and the Pacific Juvenile Defender Center, along with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, will look at reforming our juvenile strikes legislation in California. Currently, if you're 16 years old, you can receive a juvenile strike, which later on can be used against you if you go on to commit another crime as an adult, either to enhance your disposition or enhance your sentencing. District attorneys use juvenile strikes to force individuals to either take in a plea deal, or these strikes can be used against you to sentence you to life. This bill is actually retroactive, so youth who had received juvenile strikes and were sentenced as adults, they can petition the courts to go ahead and be resentenced. This is actually one of the very few one of the few bills that has not. Is one of the few bills that juvenile strikes has been reformed since its implementation. It's been almost 20 years that we've been using juvenile strikes, and there's no really effectiveness in ensuring that communities are safer with these. Mostly youth who receive juvenile strikes are Black and brown youth, or communities that are under-resourced or don't have the proper services to treat young people. So AB 1127 is a 2-year bill. It did not make it out of the originating house, so it does have a deadline to meet and get out of the originating house by January. We are, as a coalition, looking for other organizations to come and join our coalition as we look to amplify this bill, because it does affect a lot of young people who are between the ages of 16 and 17 that have received juvenile strikes. We have members that have received 3 juvenile strikes, and as adults, they're walking on eggshells. And the juvenile justice system was intended to have young people, once they complete their disposition, their sentencing, their commitment, whatever you want to call it, they were supposed to have a fresh start. I myself have gone through the process of getting an honorable discharge, getting my record sealed and dismissed. However, I still have a juvenile strike. Young people who go through the same process could still have 2 juvenile strikes or even 3 juvenile strikes. And again, the intention of the juvenile justice system was once a youth completes their disposition, their commitment, they have a fresh start. And it's truly unfair for young people to be walking on these eggshells and, you know, putting a piece of gum in your pocket, and later and finding out that could be a life sentence. It's crazy. So that is a bill that we're focused on, and hopefully we'll make it out of the originating house by January.
Okay, so thank you,
Sam. Just real quick before you move on, I just want to also just say that of those 5 bills that we mentioned, 3 of them do require a supermajority. Just because I think it's important to say. So as Miguel 1127 does require a 2/3 because it's amending a proposition. SB 481 also requires a 2/3 because it's amending Prop 115 from 1990, and then also SB 262 will require a supermajority as well. So those 3 bills are going to require a lot more votes than what we're accustomed to. I'll say so. I say that to say, concessions may have to be made just to garner more support to assure that they're able to be successful.
Thank you, Esteban. Thank you, Miguel. Just for clarity for our audience, also. So when Esteban, Selena, and Miguel talk about the House of Origin, so each bill is titled either SB or AB. If it's SB, that's a Senate bill, meaning that the House of Origin is the Senate. If it's AB, that's an assembly bill, which means the House of Origin is the assembly. So when they say that it has to move out of the House of Origin, means it has to have moved from the assembly or the Senate to the assembly or the Senate, depending on where it originated. I hope I didn't confuse you more than you may have already had. I had somebody actually text me instead of putting it in the chat. But that's what we mean when we say it has to be moved out of the House of Origin. And Esteban, could you also, or Selena, could you also explain what a supermajority is for people that may not fully understand? Like, what's the difference between a simple majority as a supermajority in our state legislature?
I can try to take a crack at it, and then Selena, please, if I miss anything, just help me out. But so in California, normally when you run legislation, it just requires a majority. So in the Assembly, it's 41 votes. In the Senate, in the Senate, it's 21. So requiring over 50%. And a supermajority, normally what requires a supermajority is if you're trying to change a ballot measure, something that was passed by the voters, or something that was in a constitution. So and that requires a 2/3 vote in both houses. And the other thing I'll just say on ACAs, on the Assembly Constitutional Amendment 3, that does not require a governor's signature, but does require a supermajority, and that would, if passed by both houses, would go to the voters. And the hope is that it goes to the voters by the 2022 election.
Okay. Thank you, Esteban. Miguel, do we have any bills that did not make it through this year and are not slated as a 2-year bill? And can you tell us why?
Yeah, so unfortunately, SB 493, authored by Senator Bradford, the Promise Act with a Y, did not make it out of the Senate appropriations. And so some of these times within like the Senate level, if it doesn't make it out of the Senate Public Safety, Senate appropriations, that's a lot of commonality that a lot of our bills go through the process. If they don't make it through that, they unfortunately die. And as coalitions, we have to come together and say, how do we go ahead and reintroduce this bill? This bill, SB 493, the Promise Act, is looking to reform a California state grant known as the Juvenile Justice Crime Prevention Act, which is worth $150 million, and it's dispersed based on population density. So Los Angeles getting the big bunch of the $150 million, and then the counties smaller than that get a lot smaller than that. But we're looking to reform it is that we're ensuring that of the money that is dispersed to the counties, that 90% goes to community-based organizations with the intention of preventing young people from coming in contact with the law. Another thing that it would require is to make the decision-making body, the committee, more equitable and community-based. Right now, you have a list of mandated agencies along with just two community partners that could be represented on the committee. We felt that that is not an equitable decision-making body, and that at least 50% of it should be community members and 50% should be stakeholders within agencies. Lastly, what it would require is that we wanted to make sure that the dollars spent were spent effectively. So a new data tracking method in ensuring is the money that is being allocated and dispersed to these organizations locally, are they addressing recidivism? Are they addressing tardiness? Are they addressing gang involvement? Are they addressing these multiple layered things that prevention is trying to address? And so currently there isn't no data that was created or requirement for the JJCPA. And so it was a very multi-layered piece of legislation that had millions of dollars moving from agency stakeholders to community stakeholders. And that wasn't a bite of the apple that a lot of people were really wanting to take, especially those that are part of the agencies that are comfortable with receiving this money for the past 20 years. And we were very fortunate, along as a coalition that is made up of multiple organizations known as CJCJ, MILPA, Burns Institute, the National Youth Center for Law, that this is the right thing to do. And we're looking to go ahead and see what else that we could present to in the next legislation cycle, and ensuring that those agencies are comfortable with the move and the shift. We were also excited to hear that the originating author, then Assemblymember Cardenas, now Congressman Cardenas, submitted a letter of support in saying that the intentions of the JJCPA were not to bolster the funds of these agencies such as probation, that technically almost always gets the funds, but also its intentions were to prevent young people from ever requiring to receive the services from probation. So we do have a lot of support from leaders in the past that were the authors of this bill. But it's going to have to be a little bit more dialogue between the agencies that currently have been receiving the money and the community members that want that money to ensure that prevention is the priority.
Thank you, Miguel. And just so our audience is clear, think in terms of this. We want to prevent youth, all of our youth, from ever coming in contact with probation or any type of law enforcement. So we need this money to go to community-based organizations that have sports and sciences and mathematics after school during the summer. So our young people have things to do, summer jobs. Our parks can be like just robust with things to do for kids. And that's not where the money is going to. The money needs to go in our communities to make sure that our kids, our children, our young people never come in contact with probation or law enforcement. That should be the plan. And those organizations that have been receiving this funding should support this. They should support this. And the reason why they should support this is because it is our responsibilities as adults, as leaders, to put our children, our young people first, period. No cut to it, nothing added to it. That's a fact. Our kids come first. It is our job to raise them, to nurture them, and allow them to be the best version of themselves. I'm sorry I get off my soapbox now. Esteban, we also had some other success, some great success this year with the California budget passing and that provided ARC with funding for our Hope and Redemption program. What else was passed in the budget? Could you share?
Yeah, just to harp a little bit on the Hope and Redemption budget allocation, it allows ARC now to be in 110 total prison yards. We'll be able to hire 24 new life coaches, so 24 new jobs for formerly incarcerated individuals, specifically for individuals who formerly served a life sentence. So to see California really rally and support that employment opportunity, and also just the opportunity to be able to provide rehabilitative services to our loved ones inside. is such a huge thing. So just to harp on that a little bit. The other thing that we did in the budget or helped to do is keep Pine Grove operational. So Pine Grove youth camp, which I used to go in pretty frequently when I first came home. I'm still in touch with a lot of my youth that are now out there actually fighting fires or part of forestry and doing incredible work. So we allocated nearly $2 million to ensure that remains operational, but not only that remains operational, but that there's an organization that's able to be there to provide services, so life skills training, mentorship services, reentry services, to really provide just a whole all hands kind of holistic approach to bringing to ensuring that people are treated with the human decency, but also are prepared and ready for when they come home. So that way we can streamline them into career paths and into housing or whatever may be required. So the ongoing budget allocation is nearly it's 1.9 million to be exact yearly, and there's no cutoff for that. So that was a huge win. We also were a part of eliminating a huge surmount amount of fees. So looking at the budget allocation was $151 million to essentially forgive 20 people who had debt associated to 23 fees, which include booking fees, arrest fees, probation fees, etc. So if you owe fees associated to those, the California is essentially going to forgive that debt, which is huge because we've seen how debt just accrues and how it impacts one's psyche, but also impacts somebody's ability to climb the economic ladder. So, and then of course, we had another huge budget allocation, but I'll let my colleague Miguel speak to that since he led and did a wonderful job. And has continued to do a wonderful job prioritizing our youth and ensuring that they're treated with the respect that they deserve.
All right. Well, one minute, Miguel, and we'll come directly to you. Just saw this in the chat. Want to welcome home Philip Lozano. Welcome home, brother. Just was released 8/30/21. Member inside, filled out your membership application online. So grateful for your hard work. Glad that you're home. Glad that we're able to shrink the prison system. Just want you to know we see you. We're shouting you out. And for all those people that are coming home, know that we're here to support you and assist you. So thank you, bro. And want to come right back to Miguel and DJJ closing, which is this is huge. And some of the public may not be aware of it, but the closure of the Department of Juvenile Justice. Could you share a little of that? And then the Office and Youth Community Restoration that's replacing it.
Yeah, this is a surreal, moment for myself, who has spent almost my teen life in DJJ. Seeing DJJ close is something I never imagined. So last year in 2020, the governor signed SB 823, which will begin the process of closing down our youth prisons, also known as the Department of Juvenile Justice. Within doing that, the governor and administration made the intention of, one, focusing the way we treat our youth in a health and human service way. And so transitioning DJJ into Health and Human Services, and also renaming the agency to the Office of Youth and Community Restoration, OYCR. In the beginning of 2021, the governor had proposed that this agency be funded annually $3 million. And advocates, a part of the California Alliance for Youth and Community Justice, that has 35 organizations from NorCal to SoCal to the Central Coast to the Central Valley, came together and said this is not the right thing to do with an organization, with an agency that's going to be overseeing 90 facilities in California, overseeing about 40,000 youth who come in contact with probation. This isn't the right thing to fund an agency that's going to have this much of a on their plate. And so advocates throughout the year were reaching out to other outside agencies that have similar roles as the OYCR, and we came up with the number. We came up that this agency shall be funded 30 million annually. We didn't get that 30 million. However, we did increase it to 27 million. Of that 27 million, 7 million will be used to annually fund the staff positions and the agency of OYCR, and that 20 million that is a part of that 27, 20 mil is going to be used all the way up until 2025 for best practices, implementation, guidance, trauma-informed practices, contracting with organizations, young people, professionals in this area of youth justice to how do we best serve this population that was once being overseen by the state that now has to be handled at the local level. And so, this is a huge win, but we ultimately, the coalition that I'm part of, CAYCJ, sees that an agency like this should be funded 30 million each year. And so while we do have 27 million this year, we're looking to, again, continue our advocacy and ensuring that an agency that has this much on their plate has the resources to serve our youth the best way.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you so much for that. And vitally important work that's being done in the juvenile sector, which a lot of people are not aware of, closing these facilities and like reimagining facilities that actually put care first and cages last. Esteban has to jump off, but I want to ask him a couple of questions before he jumps off. First, can you share with us, and this is for everyone, but first I want to go to you, Esteban, so I can let you go. Two things. One, can you share with our audience how ARC chooses what legislative focus will be for each year? And then your closing thoughts to our audience. And brother, I'll see you soon because I know you're attending a sad event today, brother. Just know that we're with you.
I appreciate you, Sam. And when we embarked on this legislative session, the advocacy team put together a survey to survey our membership to just better understand what the barriers that folks are facing today, because they're maybe very different than the barriers I faced when I was on parole and that Sam faced on parole. And then, of course, you have to take into account COVID. So we use that survey to really just set the framework for what we decided to work on this year. We saw that a lot of individuals were being turned away from housing. We saw a lot of individuals were being denied licensing opportunities, and so the 731 became a priority. Of course, we also saw that a lot of our members had served over 2 decades in prison, and that we saw that a lot of people really wanted to see sentencing reform, and so we thus from that SB 481 came about to try to allow for people who are serving life without the possibility of parole in prison to have a shot to come home, because everybody, of course, ARC believes in second chances, and we believe that everybody deserves a chance to fight for their freedom and to prove that they aren't the person that they were when they committed the crime that they did. In addition to that, we have ongoing trainings every Monday night, and really from those trainings, a lot of ideas spew out, and I also hold office hours every Friday where members will come in and kind of talk me through what barriers they're facing, and then we navigate it that way. And if there's not a way that we can navigate it without running policy, then we'll talk about, of course, some sort of legislative reform. And really, our members are on the forefront of what it is that we do. We even, whenever I've worked on a juvenile justice bill, I don't make a decision without tapping into Miguel or some of the youth that I know from DJJ. On our LWOP bill, we don't make a decision until we tap into former LWOPs. And, we firmly believe that those that are directly impacted by issues should be on the forefront of leadership positions and should be on the forefront of those decision-making, the decision-making process. So I just want to say that's something I've always valued about ARC. That's something that that we will continue, of course, at ARC. To close, what I'll say is, I've been with ARC since I came home. Sam might have been the first. Actually, Sam was the first ARC member I met when I came home, and I've I've never felt a sense of community like I felt with ARC. I've never felt a sense of a deepened sense of purpose like I felt while I've been at ARC. To see such an organization that provides every necessary resource for people when they're coming home has been just mind blowing. But then to be a part of the culture and the cultural shift of how we're trying to move not only California but nationally into a place where we're prioritizing the needs of people that are directly impacted, and also just their perspectives has been something that I've truly cherished and valued as I've come home and as I've reintegrated into society. Sometimes I'll hear people tell me, "Well, I'm an anomaly," and I say, what I'd say to that is, I'm not an anomaly. What I am is I'm a product of love, support, and services. That's what I am. I firmly believe that if we provide people with love, support, services, and we treat them like human beings and with human decency and dignity, then they have the opportunities to really flourish in today's society. And so I'll close with that, and I just want to thank my team because I couldn't do it without my team. This work is very taxing. It's very emotionally draining, especially when it personally involves you. And this work is personal. So to have the level of support that I have from my team has allowed me to be as effective as I am. So I just want to thank you, Sam, for your support, your leadership, but also thanks Selena, Miguel, Josh, Michael, and Kent Mendoza, and of course all of our interns who show up and who do this work because they value the impact and they don't do it for the wrong reasons. They do it for the right reasons. So I appreciate you all.
Thank you, Esteban, and Esteban named off our policy team. Most of our policy team, that's the policy squad. When they hit it hard. They got sharp elbows. They clear out the paint. And they go hard in the paint. And want to also thank them. It is taxing work, and I do expect them to take some time off during this legislative cycle just to chill, relax, and unplug. But I know you have to go, Esteban. Once again, thank you for joining us, brother. Greatly appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you soon, brother. Okay, take care. For Selena and Miguel, I have a couple of more questions. So we have one question from the audience. Are there any plans to work on retroactive sentencing policy change next year?
So, I mean, it's a little bit tough to fully know what we're going to work on next year. Of course, retroactive sentencing is super important to ARC. Our sort of legislative, our bills have kind of been set for next year because we have so many 2-year bills. So we don't have a ton of room for more bills. I will say that the bill that we're working on, 41, that Esteban talked about a little bit, is retroactive as it stands right now. And that's the bill that provides youth who were sentenced to LWOP, people under the age of 26, with a second chance and opportunity for parole, and that would be retroactive. So yeah, and then some of our other bills that are more targeted towards enhancements and things like that, we're hoping to eventually make retroactive in the future. But right now, there are other ways for them to still support people who are currently incarcerated. For example, if they have their case opened up through a different bill, different piece of legislation, then in a sense, the bills that we're passing can be retroactive. That's a little bit complicated, but yeah, we hope to.
Okay, so we do hope to.
I could speak on also. Also, AB 1127 will be retroactive. That's the juvenile strikes bill. So if a young person later on as an adult caught a charge and their juvenile strikes were used to enhance their commitment or their disposition, those individuals could petition the court for resentencing if AB 1127 passes next year.
Okay, great. And just want to reiterate what Esteban said in terms of how we determine what our legislative focus will be, we go to our membership. And so what our membership is, so that the audience understands, our membership consists of 100% formerly incarcerated people. And so that's how we make our decisions on what we're going to do. My glasses are cooking. I lost my other glasses when I went on vacation, by the way. So, but that's how we make our decisions on what legislation we're going to push forward. We also, there was a question in the chat that asked about how a person can make a suggestion. So write to us. And for our people that are currently incarcerated, we do take suggestions from people that are incarcerated. Literally, we have a whole department. When we get these letters, and there's a great idea, we will work on doing both the research and seeing if it's actually feasible. So that it goes to the policy team, part of what you see here. And then if it's feasible, if it's something that we can do, we take action and we move it forward. So literally it comes from people that are incarcerated, people that are formerly incarcerated is the base of the decision making when it comes. And you can email us if you have a loved one. Our email address, info@antirecidivism.org, is right there on the screen. You can email us with ideas. If you have a family member that's incarcerated that has ideas, please have them write you or write us, and you can email us. So those are ways that you can actually give us suggestions in terms of criminal justice reform and policies that we can change and make our system both more humane, caring, and shrink it most of all.
Can I add to that real quick?
Absolutely, please.
So definitely write to us. We also hold policy trainings for members every Monday from 5 to 6 p.m. on Zoom. So if you're an ARC member, definitely ask your life coach about that. Come to policy training. We discuss everything that we're working on, all of your ideas. So that's a really great way to get involved. And then I also kind of want to speak to this thing that Sam and Esteban were talking about like how we choose our legislation. 100% comes from our members and things like this. I also want to say that it kind of fits into a larger political framework. So a lot of times a member has an awesome idea, or a few members have an awesome idea. And it's maybe something that like the strategy takes a couple of years longer or a few years longer. And we have to do some research ahead of that. So I also want to say that like we are, as a policy team, in this for the long haul, because that's what it's going to take. And just because we're not introducing a bill this year, that doesn't mean that we are not absolutely invested in it and like doing the work so that when we do introduce it, it is successful.
So that's you give you some transparency into how we function as an organization when it comes to our policies. One more question before we close out. How can community members get involved in policy change without a background or education in policy processes? And let me back up for a minute. So if you have, and I've seen Stephen Green and I see Salim and some of our other members that are on the chat. Every Monday, we hold policy training and discussions for our members. So if you have family members that are members, that's another way for you to tap in. So just know that we do that, and it's always open to our membership. But how can community members get involved that have no background on education and policy processes?
First of all, I would say follow ARC and similar policy organizations that you care about on social media so that you can stay apprised of what bills are going through the legislature. People will usually provide action items for those bills. Every bill is different. Every legislator is different. So yeah, definitely do that. Amplify those posts when you see them. Amplify that information when you see them. Zooming out a little bit, I think that criminal justice issues impact, every layer of our community and our society and the way that we live our lives more than people care to really talk about and discuss. So if these issues are important to you and you don't work in policy, that's great, because that means that you are positioned in a way that I'm not, and Miguel's not, and Sam's maybe not, where you are like in a field, in an industry that we maybe don't usually have access to. And you can amplify these issues and the voices of people who experience these issues in whatever space you occupy. And that can be like your church, where you work. Like, how can you hire people who are formerly incarcerated in your industry and make sure that they have a pathway to leadership positions? So yeah, I know that's not really like the sort of exciting, like, instant gratification of passing a bill, I guess. But it does make a huge difference. And the more that these issues kind of exist in mainstream public consciousness, the more success we're going to have in passing these bills. So yeah, amplify voices, talk about in your community, and definitely follow ARC and other policy organizations that you care about.
I would like to add on to that is, so, we come up with a lot of Twitter storms. There'll be phone calling to either legislators that within public safety or the appropriations committees, or social media. Like, again, follow us on ARC, our Twitter, our Facebook, our Instagram. There's a lot of opportunities during the legislative cycle that us as a membership, us as a team, we may not have that capacity, or we're not geographically in areas that have influence or more influence to these legislators or these individuals that have, decision-making power. So when there's a please retweet something, retweet it. That builds up capacity and builds up voice for those that technically don't really have a voice right now or have not had a voice in the past. When there's a please call the governor to support this type of legislation, or to support folks in that are inside institutions, grant some type of relief to individuals that are incarcerated. When those things present themselves through our social media or through a call or a text or email, please take advantage of that. I think that the effectiveness of that, people tend to not see it, but it's really impactful when there's capacity building up, not just within our own realm of juvenile justice advocates, but others that are not in this realm, that are in business, that are in other types of professions. It helps us show that we as California want to see different in the way we treat those who have committed harm, and we want to see them rehabilitated and have the resources so that more harm is not committed.
Thank you, Miguel. And so, Celine, Miguel, for closing thoughts, two things. One, your closing thoughts, and what legislation are you looking forward to in 2022? So your closing thoughts, and then what legislation are you really looking forward to in 2022? Selena?
Sure. My closing thoughts, I don't know. I'm just really excited to work with this team, work with ARC members, work with the community at large in California. Really excited to expand some of our state policies to the federal level. You've probably heard a little bit more about what we're doing there from Michael on previous fireside chats. Next year, I'm really excited to work on legislation around LWOP and offering second chances to people, to youth in particular. Although I certainly believe that everyone deserves a second chance. So yeah, I'm really thrilled about that. We're doing a lot of work around LWOP right now. There's so many people who have come home either because of legislation or because of commutations, who were sentenced to LWOP, who are just incredible leaders in our community, and we've been able to come together with them. And so I'm really, really excited to sort of see their leadership moving forward with LWOP bills and see who we can bring home.
Thank you, Selena. Miguel, what are you excited about looking forward to in 2022? And what are your closing thoughts for our audience?
I'm excited about, working on AB 1127, juvenile strikes. I think it's time past due where youth are treated more harshly than their adult counterparts in some ways. But I'm really wanting to see a change in our juvenile strikes legislation, and hopefully we could get it passed. I'm also wanting to ensure that the youth who are currently still inside DJJ are safe, are being treated fairly, and are getting the resources that they deserve while it's still intact. I'm looking forward to making sure that the Office of Youth and Community Restoration has the resources to ensuring that these counties that are not going to be taking responsibility of the youth who have now reached the deepest end of the juvenile justice system, really are ensure that there's no free passes, that youth are not treated harshly at the local level, and ensuring that the legislations that we've passed in the past are implemented correctly at the local levels. That's my dream. That's my goal for next year. But also too, I'm excited to see a lot of more members within our organization get involved. We had an opportunity to take some of our members at the end of this legislative cycle, and I'm wanting to see that more, of getting more members involved, because that's how we've been able to make change. It's not just the team. It's not just us talking professionally to these legislators. It's our own personal stories that unfortunately we've had experienced trauma that really moves these legislators, that really change the hearts and minds and perspective of these agency leaders. And so as much as the community out there thinks that they depend on us, we depend on the community even more, because without them, we wouldn't be getting nothing done.
Thank you, Miguel. And thank you both for joining. Thank you to our audience for joining. I want to just share one thing, just to give you a snapshot. We have now helped write, advocate, and pass 29 pieces of legislation and statewide initiatives as an organization. And it's because of the heart and soul of our members and our staff that have really put forward the effort. And never forget Scott, that opened these doors that say, you know what, we just need to make the relationships, build it, and make sure we amplify the voices of the people that are directly affected, the people that have been incarcerated. So just want to give a shout out once again to the entire policy team, even those that aren't here. Thank you to the community for supporting us. We'll see you in 2 weeks. I have an idea that I'm going to talk to you about for our next social, Selena, and it deals with LWOP. So tune in 2 weeks. Until then, take care. God bless. And see you soon.